From a sunny, handsome young guy to a human folded in half at a 180-degree angle. After having his bones broken 4 times and 22 steel nails implanted, he finally stood back up. Hi everyone, today we're gonna talk about Li Hua, the man who lived folded in half. Li Hua was born in 1974 into an ordinary farming family in China. Though not wealthy, their life was simple and stable. This was Li Hua at 18, sharp jawline, full of youth energy, right in the prime of his youth, with endless dreams for the future. But life has a way of throwing curveballs. One morning when he was 18, he woke up with a dull ache in his knees. He brushed it off, thinking he had just pulled a muscle. After resting a few days, the pain seemed to subside. But as time went on, the pain got more frequent and worse over time. Li Hua finally realized this wasn't just a simple sprain. He went to a small local clinic where the doctor took a quick look and diagnosed him with regular arthritis. Nothing serious, they said, handing him some anti-inflammatory meds and painkillers. At first, the meds worked pretty well. The pain went away quickly. Just as he thought he had beaten this minor issue, the drugs suddenly stopped working. Not only did his knees hurt, but the pain started spreading to other joints too, especially his lower back and neck. Soon, he couldn't even straighten his body. Here's the thing, regular arthritis doesn't cause symptoms this bad, but the small-town hospitals couldn't figure out what was wrong. Li Hua needed to go to a big city hospital, so his mom dragged him everywhere searching for answers until finally they got the diagnosis: ankylosing spondylitis. It's a chronic inflammatory joint disease that mainly attacks the spine. The disease itself isn't exactly rare. It affects about 0.3% of people, but cases as extreme as Li Hua's are super rare. Li Hua's condition wasn't just bad, it got worse at lightning speed. He first got sick at 18. By 27, his neck started slowly folding inward. At 29, he couldn't lift his head anymore, and then his upper body began bending too. By 33, he was bent at a 90-degree angle. By 36, his face was less than 2 centimeters away from his thighs, and he stayed frozen like that until 46. For 28 years, from age 18 to 46, his body practically folded in half. Li Hua's mom dragged him around to God knows how many cities and doctors, but every time they left disappointed. Let's face it, with today's tech, this disease is incurable, a total dead end. The best you can hope for is to ease the pain or stop it from getting worse. But Li Hua's body just kept breaking down. He ended up becoming one of China's worst spinal deformity cases. After Li Hua got sick, his family, already scraping by, fell even deeper into poverty and racked up a pile of debts. When those sky-high medical bills became impossible to handle, he had no choice but to give up treatment and leave his fate to the heavens. After living with the disease for so many years, Li Hua had gotten used to this twisted life. He couldn't lie flat to sleep, only curl up sideways. He couldn't stand straight, couldn't lift his head, couldn't see anything beyond his own feet and the 3 inches of dirt beneath them. Even his eyes had become deformed from years of staring sideways at the ground. Every basic need, eating, drinking, using the bathroom, sleeping, relied entirely on his mother's around-the-clock care. But time doesn't stop. Before they knew it, Li Hua's mom was in her 70s. She knew her days were numbered. What would happen to Li Hua after she was gone? The thought terrified her. She couldn't bear imagining how he would suffer without her. So she made a choice, one last shot at finding a cure. As a mother, if she gave up on him, who else would step in to save her son? Finally, their persistence paid off. One day, in an online patient support group, Li Hua's mom stumbled on a name, Dr. Tao Huiren, head of spinal surgery at Shenzhen University General Hospital. This guy had pulled off miracles for severe spinal deformities, more corrective surgeries under his belt than anyone else in China. For the first time in decades, hope flickered back to life. In 2019, after a grueling journey from their rural Hunan village, mother and son arrived in Shenzhen. Dr. Tao had braced himself for a tough case, but reality hit harder. Years of immobility had drained the calcium from Li Hua's bones, leaving them brittle as chalk. His spine was on the brink of snapping. His lungs and kidneys were being crushed by his folded torso. The skin where his body folded was raw and rotting, a ticking time bomb for deadly infections. Bottom line, Li Hua wouldn't survive much longer without surgery. Dr. Tao laid it straight. With all these complications, whether we operate or not, Li Hua is facing huge risks, either complete paralysis or death. Dr. Tao and his team huddled over meetings again and again, arguing over treatment plans. Every decision was life or death. One wrong move on the operating table and Li Hua's entire future could collapse. Finally, Dr. Tao mapped out a plan, 4 surgeries, starting from the easier lower body and moving upward. Here's a breakdown. First up, break Li Hua's femoral neck, that's the hip area, to create space between his face and legs. This way, he could lie face down for later surgeries. Next, break his thoracic and lumbar spine to straighten his upper body. Third, swap both hips with artificial joints so he could walk. Big finale, break the 7th cervical vertebra, base of the neck, to let him lift his head, the riskiest of all. Each surgery was a mountain to climb, packed with nightmare risks. But Li Hua, he had been waiting 28 years for this shoot. He was all in, betting his life on this gamble. In doctor-patient relationships, it all boils down to one thing: trust. Doctors pour their hearts into howling, fighting tooth and nail for every patient, while patients literally hand over their lives to these white coats. Li Hua believed in Dr. Tao's skills down to his bones. He followed every instruction to the letter, never missing a pill or skipping rehab, treating the doctor's words like gospel. Dr. Tao warned Li Hua these surgeries would drain him like a marathon. He had to gain weight beforehand. Eating was torture for someone folded in half, but Li Hua treated it like a military mission. He would force him to eat day and night, shoving down bites whenever possible. Between meals, he would blow up balloons non-stop to straighten his lungs. 2 months later, he had packed on 6 pounds, hitting the target weight. Not long after, the first surgery finally got rolling, but just getting him under anesthesia turned into a nightmare. Li Hua needed 4 knockout meds, which meant stopping his breathing cold. Doctors had to thread a tube through his mouth or nose straight into his lungs, hooked to a machine pumping oxygen. For most folks, this is a breeze, but Li Hua, his mouth was practically glued to his thighs, leaving almost no room to work. Worse, his windpipe was twisted like a pretzel, nothing like the straight pipe normal people have. Sliding that tube down his crooked airway, pure surgical gymnastics. To nail it safely, they had to do the tube insertion while Li Hua was wide awake. Most patients thrash around, turning a quick job into an hours-long fight. But Li Hua, he lay sideways on the table, silent as stone, biting down the pain until the tube slid home. With the anesthesia working smoothly, surgery number 1 kicked off as planned. The goal was simple: break Li Hua's femoral neck, that spot where your leg meets your hip, to pry open space between his face and legs. That way he could lie face down for the next surgeries. The whole thing took 3 hours and went off without a hitch. But here's the catch: after 2 weeks of recovery, the gap between his face and thighs only stretched from 1.8 centimeters pre-surgery to over 30 centimeters, still not enough to flip him onto his stomach. Staring at this roadblock, Dr. Tao made one of his gut-seized course after weighing every angle. He completely reshuffled the surgery order. The most dangerous final procedure, cutting the 7th neck bone to lift Li Hua's head, got moved up to become the second surgery. The plan was simple but wild. Tilting his head upward might finally let him lie face down for later operations. But here's a twist. This neck operation had to happen with Li Hua sitting up straight, something no surgeon had ever attempted. Keeping his folded body balanced on the table was like balancing a Jenga tower during an earthquake. A single wobble could mean catastrophe. The medical team drilled every possible disaster scenario, practicing until their hands cramped. Scans showed the worst of Li Hua's neck deformity was at the 7th cervical vertebra. Breaking that bone allowed his head to tilt upward, then locked into place with 22 steel nails. This surgery was walking a tightrope. Even a tiny slip near the spinal cord meant paralysis, while nicking the carotid artery could cause fatal bleeding. Doing it with him sitting upright doubled the danger. The operating room hung in breathless silence, every medic laser-focused. After 6.5 grueling hours, the miracle happened. Li Hua could finally lift his head. Next came surgeries 3 and 4. The catch: his body remained folded in a V shape with freshly operated neck and broken hips too fragile for pressure. To position him face down safely, the only solution was propping his abdomen with supports. Easier said than done. It took a dozen staff working like movers shifting a mountain to flip him. Surgery 3 aimed to break 2 thoracic vertebrae and straighten his upper body. The 10.5-hour marathon saw multiple near crises but ended in victory. When Li Hua lay flat on the bed for the first time, 28 years of suffering finally cracked open. Let's face it, even a healthy person would crumble under so many brutal surgeries back to back, and Li Hua's body was already hanging by a thread. Dr. Tao slammed the brakes, ordering him to rest up before the final operation. Then came a curveball. Li Hua started running fevers out of nowhere. Every doctor's pulse spiked because fevers usually scream infection, and with his immunity shot to hell, that would be a death sentence. But luck swung their way. Tests showed it was just inflammation from the surgeries. A round of anti-inflammatory meds later, the fevers vanished like morning fog. After months' rest, the final act, replacing both hip joints. Easier than before, but still a 7-hour grind. Now, Li Hua could stand on his own 2 feet. From start to finish, June 2019 to June 2020, Li Hua endured a full year of grueling treatment. After 4 bone-breaking rebuilds, he finally got his second shot at life. These days, he can walk with braces, but years of being folded up left his muscles wasted. He'll need months of rehab exercises to rebuild strength and finally take care of himself.
我自己看到也失望了。 就是我就终于慢慢的可以开始行走了，可以自在了，感到很开心了。
For over 20 years, Li Hua barely stepped outside except for hospital visits. 2 months post-surgery, he took his first unassisted steps out the door, straight to his childhood home. The crumbling house held all his happiest memories from his first 18 years. Standing there, he stared at the familiar yet foreign ruins, muttering, "If I hadn't gotten sick, I'd have renovated this place ages ago." Most people can't wait to grow up and leave home, but Li Hua's deepest wish was to rewind time back to those carefree days before illness stole his youth.